Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Joel and Adam, and we're going to be talking about The Company of Wolves. This is a 1984 movie. It's directed by Neil Jordan, stars Angela Lansbury, and it's one that I think people don't really talk about that much. So, and I haven't seen it since I was very young, so I'm curious what you guys are going to think about it, and I'll talk about what I think about it as well. I guess, do we need to give a breakdown of what this is, or do we want to just jump into a discussion of it?
I say we subject the audience to the same thing you subjected me and Adam
Okay.
to, and we just jump into it.
Okay, all
We're
right.
going in raw, folks.
Okay, so why don't I give my reaction first, so I can kind of head off some of the criticisms I know I'm about to get.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, so I had not seen this since I was in high school. I had pneumonia one semester, and I missed a bunch of class, and I had to go take classes during the summer. And while I was sick, this came on TV, and I was really into Ravenloft, and somehow it captivated me. And I went and I rented it, and I watched it a bunch of times. And while I was taking these classes over the summer, I ended up writing a paper on it. And so I watched it, rewatched it, and watched it. And I had always kind of remembered it as this really great movie. And now that I've had a chance to go back, and the thing is, I've been recommending it to everybody too in the intervening years. And I even got in an argument with my friend Gary from my Tuesday game way back in the day, because he thought it was terrible and I thought it was great. And I kind of have to apologize to him, because I was so bored watching this movie the other night that I almost turned it off. I couldn't quite get through it. I made it through the end, but I don't know. I think the thing that must have attracted me to it initially was the visuals and the music and just the look and feel of it, because I did notice there are periods in the movie where it's like, wow, there's something interesting going on the screen. And it also really captures that feel of the, like Ravenloft from the 90s. Like, it definitely has that kind of vibe, which I think resonated with me. But it takes so long for things to happen. There's a lot of just pointless walking through the village and talking with grandma. And there's just stuff that I just didn't like. I remembered all of the cool scenes and none of the boring stuff. So I don't know if you guys liked it or not, but that was my reaction to it last night.
Adam, let's tag you in. I'm tagging you in.
Okay.
I'm not ready yet.
I actually really like this movie.
Okay.
Just on the atmosphere alone, I agree. I can see why most people wouldn't like it. And honestly, I was surprised. I was like, this is a movie Brendan recommends. The guy who hates arty horror movies. I was like, how did Brendan like this? There's no way, Brendan. So I feel relieved. I'm like, okay, I do know you. You hated this. That's great. But no, I don't know. I really just, I don't know, just the atmosphere. There's very little in the way of a coherent plot to this movie.
Yeah.
But it just worked for me. I mean, you brought up the Ravenloft comparison. Like I'm very big into running Warhammer, the Warhammer RPG, which in its not its mini battle computer game version, but its role-playing version has a very similar aesthetic to this movie too. And so that was one thing I did like about it. But I don't know. This is like based on a 1970s fantasy short story. I read a lot of fantasy in the 70s and 80s, and it felt to me like a lot of just the more strange fantasy drawing on folklore that was around at the time that I used to read. I was like, oh, this reminds me of a story I'd read when I was a teenager. That's cool.
In fairness, I almost did go back and read that story last night, because I was like, I think this would be better I could see this being entertaining as a story where the prose is going to matter a lot more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'll also say, I think the things that I did like about it when I first saw it were definitely the atmosphere and the visuals. And even last night, some of the stuff I liked was the sort of dream story within a dream within a story, like just the weird bending of reality and how it all comes crashing back into reality at the end. That I thought was interesting. The atmosphere, I do think, was impeccable at times in terms of the music, the look. I thought the werewolves were very interesting. I don't think I've seen werewolves that were like that, but not quite to this extent. Yeah. And I think the Angela Lansbury character is entertaining, but the problem is when she's not on screen, you're left with other things that are a lot less compelling. Or and also it's a movie built around set pieces, and I think I'm perfectly content to watch a movie for set pieces, but this time around watching it, I was just overly aware of how everything was building to a set piece, and the moments in between felt somewhat artificial, or just, I don't know, I just had trouble connecting to them.
I will say it was wise of this movie to only be an hour and a half. If it had gone on for longer, it would have worn out my patience. I'd be giving it a more negative review. But it was just long enough to get it across, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm ready for it to be over now.
So Joel, you seem to have had a much more negative reaction, unless you were misleading us there. But what was your response to the movie?
Y'all like sleeping on the biggest thing. This is a horny ass movie. Everybody horny in this movie. Everybody's sexy. Yeah. Like, I was stunned that you recommended this to me. Like, I sat down to watch it with a friend of mine, and I was like, "Oh, dude, Brendan loves horror stuff. He loves it. This will be great." And like, it was almost like watching like a softcore porn on Cinemax.
It wasn't that bad.
It was, man. This was nobody was wearing a bra. All the guys were shirtless and muscular and undulating.
I have to step in here.
Horny as hell.
So my understanding is the woman who wrote the story and I think she wrote the screenplay, but I'm not sure. She was definitely going for the subtext of the Little Red Riding Hood stories. There is that component to it.
Subtext? They straight up put Little Red Riding Hood. This was a story where they built to Little Red Riding Hood, and like they built every molecule of that story, and then they erupted into like the French ass, the wolf is gonna nail you version. Like, this is a horny movie, dude.
It's a horny. But what I object to is the Skinamax comparison, because it's not like there were any actual sex scenes or anything like that. It was
it's more erotica than porn.
I mean, this is girl porn. This isn't real porn. But like,
it's definitely.
And the other thing about it is most of the erotic stuff deals with the wolf men that are coming after, right? So it's definitely from a female perspective rather than a male perspective. I would say.
I just as the sole person here that's attracted to men, like, I gotta tell you, this is a foxy movie. No, I love this movie. I actually really enjoyed the framing. It surprised me right away by having what I thought was going to be like the actual like movie start, and it turns out it's a framing device where it's like the modern stuff, and then the girl falls asleep and she's just fever dreaming the whole movie. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess we're not coming back to that. So that was great. First of all, I loved that. I loved the way we kind of get introed into this weird dreamscape that it feels like a dream. You know, it's got that Freddy Krueger like blending reality and dream stuff. It's got that one like freaky Burn Ward doll without a face that they turn into a puppet Burn Ward guy without a face. And they don't come back to it. They're just like, no. We're going to give them enough of that to shock them into accepting what we're about to show them. The sets are beautiful, huge, handcrafted affairs that were like really gorgeous sets. They use the hell out of them. They're smart enough to shoot them from really flattering angles and reuse them just enough that you don't get used to them. It's a gorgeous and visionary movie in a lot of ways, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't realize it was just going to be a framing device for a bunch of horny wolf-themed Tales from the Dark Side episodes, but I got to tell you, I'm on board for that. Like, if they just pitched me that, I'd be like, okay, I got to watch this movie. And I'm not disappointed. I actually I thrilled at this. I see where it could kind of drag in places, but honestly, I couldn't predict this movie. I was on tenterhooks every picosecond of this movie, not knowing what was going to happen next, and it always swerved in a weird way for me. So I was consistently surprised and delighted. The visuals were consistently mind-blowingly good. Like, yeah, man, no, this movie completely owns. I loved it. And maybe I loved it because it was really sexy and it appealed to me. And maybe I loved it because I'm a real visual movie watcher. I like silent movies. And this is an extremely visual movie.
The visuals are great. I do not criticize the visuals at all. And the sound. I think the sound married to the visuals was very good. I was just surprised by how bored I was last night. That was my main...
I could see it. Like I said at the end of this movie to the person I was watching it with, I wouldn't watch this a second time.
Okay.
The not knowing where it was going to go, I think, was a very vital component of enjoying it. Because as soon as you can predict this, it's like, okay, we're gonna listen to her mollify a wolf she just shot, who's a werewolf, with a story about a lady who comes out of a well, then goes back the hell into it. Woo. Yeah, okay, that's lame. But it's not lame the first time you watch it, because the first time you watch it, you're really spellbound by it, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, watch this movie once. It'll be great. Just don't come back to it later.
I'm glad I knew nothing. It's like, you said, we're going to do the Company of Wolves. Like, oh, I've never heard of that movie. Okay. I didn't watch the trailer. I just put it on last night. I had no idea. You said the opening part. It's like, I've been watching, Hammer House of Horror, the Hammer TV series recently. And I'm like, that early part, just the way it was shot and everything, the modern day part, I felt like I'm like, oh, is this going to be kind of that same aesthetic as a Hammer House of Horror episode? And then it just, you enter that dream part, and I'm like, whoa,
I mean,
this is very different.
And it gets really weird, too. Like the scenes where they take off heads, and there's like a milk theme where the head falls into a bucket of milk, and grandma's head gets knocked off and turns into like a coconut that spills milk. And I still don't know, were they did they want you to see the coconut, or was the coconut the effect and it was accidental that you saw traces of the coconut? That's bothered me ever since, because I remember having a conversation with the teacher from that summer class I went to, where I was just like, I don't understand, was the coconut meant to be, or was it not meant to be there? And I had trouble getting over that. But
the head's coming out, and they did do a lot of decapitations in this film, which, oh god, and the transformations were like violent and horrible and great. The guy rips off his own skin, and he's just like this fleshless wolf underneath, and then he turns into a wolf. Sold, man. Absolutely sold.
Since you brought that scene up too, I've got to say that is 100% the influence for the scene in Nightbreed where the guy rips his skin off in the hospital. I watched that. I was like, Barker was just homaging this scene. Yeah. There's like, just the way it was shot, everything. I was like, he saw Company of Wolves, like, I'm going to put that in my movie.
There's no way he missed Company of Wolves. This is, if you're a bi guy or a gay guy, I think this might be a required horror viewing for you.
Clive Barker, a British theater guy who was in the early *80s, involved in the arts. He saw this movie. There's no question.
Yeah, if nothing else, one of his fellow, it was recommended. This is a thing. Like, I know who I'm going to recommend this movie to. All of my gay friends are going to be like, dude, you got to watch Company of Wolves. Trust me on this. You're going to wait. It's a slow burn, but there is this fop nobleman who is absolutely ripped, and they let you know about it for like a solid 2 minutes. Watch the movie.
Well, there's the whole scene. We're talking about the compass. I have an object in my pants.
In my pocket.
Always
would you like to know about it?
That was pretty funny. I did laugh this time around watching that. But I mean, it knows what it's doing.
It's coy in a really kind of fun way. And
also, is this a movie where after the grandmother is killed by the wolf, the Red Riding Hood becomes a wolf willingly, right? Like, it's a very different sort of ending than you're expecting. But and then she crashes through the reality of her sleeping self, and it gets weird.
I think this might be a movie about someone realizing they're a sociopath, but being totally into it.
So apparently that crashing through the reality is about her loss of innocence. That's what it's about.
Is it though?
That's what it says on the wiki page. So I'm going to say that's probably.
Oh, come on! Like, wiki writers are idiots. You heard me.
No, but I think it's based on the story and what the writer was going for. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's one of those kind of things. I mean, it's debatable, I'm sure.
I think, honestly, I feel like movies like this trying to say I mean, it's kind of like with Lynch movies where it's like he's saying something, but he's not saying things that you can just say in a sentence. It's like it's like that's what I liked about this movie. It's kind of conveying things you can't just say. I'm like, yeah, I get this movie. Yeah. I can't explain it to you in words, but watch the movie. It's saying it.
Well, and I will say that
experiential. I hate when people try to boil down something as sophisticated and emotionally complex as this movie into what is effectively a simile. This is that. No, damn it, it's not. It's not all one for one stand-in for things. It's more complicated than that.
Well, here's what I would say. And again, I don't know for sure, but assuming that that's what the writer intended, I think then it's important to at least acknowledge that that's what the writer said they were trying to do.
Well, there's loss of innocence is definitely a theme in the movie.
But
that's undeniable.
But my emotional reaction to the scene where the wolves crash through the wall isn't, innocence lost. It's wow, like this is like it's just this weird thing that shouldn't be, because it's violating all of these rules of the way movies are supposed to work. Do you know what I mean? Like there's like the whole idea of her being in that sleeping state is that no matter what happens in the dream, she's going to be safe in bed at the end of the movie, right? Like that's sort of the unless this is Nightmare on Elm Street, that things are going to be fine. The moment those wolves enter into the house, suddenly her and her whole family are in actual peril from the dream that she's having, which whatever, symbolic meaning you want to ascribe to it, in terms of horror, it's like
a violation.
It's an immediate reaction. So.
I mean, if I'm going to give my ham-fisted analysis of the ending, it's just
do it.
You're kind of in this fairy tale world, but it's like it is we think of Little Red Riding Hood and all this stuff, these children's stories, they're often la frou-frou land, but it's like, no, this is real and significant. Okay. This stuff matters. That's my analysis. If I have to come up with a single analysis for it.
I do like that. I like that.
I like that it makes the wolves a threat both in the dream and in our real life. Like they're the link between it. That threat and what they represent, they kind of transcends the boundary of safety that you're used to. Like that's a great analysis. Excellent ham fisting, friend.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure how to take that, but
your fisting was quite impressive.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough with the fisting. So, what was everybody's take on Angela Lansbury? Because obviously, she's like
I love Angela.
She's the thing you notice when you watch the movie.
I mean, that was the one thing I knew about it. You said that one with Angela Lansbury. I'm like, sold. Angela Lansbury's fantastic.
Name drop Angela Lansbury. I'm there, baby.
I feel like everybody has an aunt or a grandmother like that character somewhere buried in their family, right? Like it's just like it's a personality that that everybody kind of knows.
She's nice. She was very prickly. I liked her character a lot because she was weird and edgy, and she made her own rules, and everyone had their own relationship with Granny. It's good. Really, the family relationships are worth commenting on in this film. They're very genuine and very believable and good. It makes you really like the characters in this film. Yeah. Despite the fact they don't really do a lot of like dialogue or anything.
At the very beginning of the movie, when you're still in the modern part, when David Warner, as the father, is going into the house, he's like, "Oh, you got to talk to him." It's like she just says, "I don't understand." It's like, "Oh," the mother says, "That's ridiculous." He's like, "No, she's right." And I was just like, "That is perfect." Yeah, I was like, "No, I don't get her. I don't understand teenage girls." I was like, "That's just that was just such a fantastic line."
I like too how it opens up with her sleeping and the other sister is like scolding her through the door. And then the next thing is the other sister in the dream being ripped apart by wolves.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. Well, let's just do away with that immediately. That point too.
I was like, this is a dream, right? Yeah. She because at that point I wasn't sure if this was going to be just a dream sequence. We were going to go back. It's like, ooh, she's had a dream. Her sister's in trouble. Now she's going to have to try and save her sister from the dream. I thought it was a more conventional.
They just dispatched with it. They just, she's gone. And then the family's in mourning. It's an interesting transition. I do agree with you guys that like that, all that weird stuff you see helps get you to this weird village isolated in the woods.
They do a really good job of bridging it. Another thing that's interesting is they keep cutting back to her. Like a lot of times you'll do a framing device and you'll only cut at like really set appropriate times during the story. Like the Tales from the Dark Side movie does that with the kid about to get eaten by the witch or whatever. Like, and you only cut back kind of whenever you're expecting to cut back. This movie keeps like, it does the thing that dreams do, where you're not, sometimes you kind of wake up a little bit and things are a little blended, and then you just shot back into the dream, and it's not clear which one is a memory and which one is like the simulacrum.
I had like 5 of those episodes last night where I would wake up and I was dreaming of a noise, and I woke up and my wife is snoring, and then I go back to sleep, and again I wake up and I'm dreaming of noise, and
and because we experience it, like we can tell when something does it well. And this movie does it well. Again, I liked this movie a lot. I'd say this again. I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again, but I will recommend it to people.
I could see putting it on just for the atmosphere. I mean, I don't know that I'd sit down and like watch the movie in detail again, but sometimes I just like to have movies on just because it's, it's just got a vibe going on. This movie has a really interesting feel to it.
And I will say, I always like that little Baroque sequence in the middle where the woman who's pregnant goes to like the high society wedding.
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that one always stuck with me. Both for the visuals, because it's very striking that they're using like all of this, like they have all the wigs and the powdered makeup and everything, and you're not necessarily expecting that.
Yeah,
and just the, I don't know, just the tone of it worked. Yeah, I think what just got me this time was just there were just so many things of like, okay, we're walking in the village. Okay, this dumbass boy is trying to take her through a walk in the woods. Like, just like all these little things where it was just like, okay, can we get to like, something horrifying, please?
Yeah.
But and also I think that when I watched it in the 90s, this style of filmmaking didn't feel. It felt like current. Do you know what I mean? Even like in the early mid 90s, it still felt fairly current to me. But now when I watch it, it's almost like watching fairy tale theater. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I haven't seen that in ages, so maybe that looks way worse than this. I don't know. But it just kind of brings me back to sort of that type of storytelling where it's like, okay, this looks a little bit, I don't know, it just wasn't landing sometimes. It's like there are these moments where it really has these stunning visuals and captures my attention, and then there were these moments where I fully realized they're on a set. Do you know what I mean? Like the scene where she's talking about the priest in the tree. That scenes like that, where I actually like that scene. Yeah, it's
clearly a set.
Yeah, I like that scene, but the visuals kind of pop me a little bit out of the immersive elements of it.
I've been watching almost nothing but Shaw Brothers movies for the last 2 weeks. So movies on a set is not.
I know. I should talk. I know. I don't complain at all when it's a Shaw Brothers movie, so I probably shouldn't complain here. I think why I complain though is because it gets one look at certain times, and then it goes back to the look of the set. And it's that. It's that.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
Going back and forth, that was kind of
some whiplash.
Yeah.
And you're right. Modern style movies, you can never really tell when they're on a set unless they screw it up. But this one, like, you're right. Sometimes you really feel like you're there. Like that opening. I'm going to go back to that opening where you're doing the bridge between sleeping and going into the forest. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a little bit of settiness to it all. But for the most part, it feels like Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like, you're there, man. But then, you have a scene like that. And it almost feels like a high-end sitcom. Again, I go back to the Tales from the Dark Side thing, where you kind of knew that the budget was.
That might be a better comparison than Fairy Tale Theater, Tales from the Dark Side. But
well, I mean, I've got the box set right here, literally in front of me. Acquired it at a garage sale for $4, so that was a great deal. But yeah, so it's on my mind, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Okay. I literally just grabbed this as you were saying that, but
oh, look, we got the same one. Yeah, boyo.
I ordered it on sale with some other things, and I was like, and then I forgot I had it last week. I saw it in my closet. I was like, oh man, I've got all of Tales from the Dark Side, and I haven't. Yeah, you bringing it up, I'm like, I've got to put it by my TV so I don't forget again. There we go.
God, look at all these discs. I love this series so much. I watched this all the time back in the day. Yeah. But so I have a certain nostalgic weakness for that exact set look. So I'm more forgiving of it. But you're not wrong. You do notice it. And if that really does yank you out of the movie, honestly, I couldn't blame you for it. It's pretty artificial, and I don't know that they weave the artificiality well enough into it to forgive it on those merits. So,
but the key thing for me is I just found myself bored. And I was surprised because I was like, I recommended this so highly, and then I sat down to watch it, and I was like, oh, I'm not enjoying this. Something's wrong.
Sometimes when I go back to a movie I really love too, it's like I've consumed it in my brain intellectually so much. There's almost nothing. There's no more sustenance in it sometimes. So maybe it's something like that for you. I don't know.
I think it's also when I watched it, I was like 16. I don't know exactly what year in high school I was, but I was in a different place in terms of like what I thought was interesting, what kind of movies I like, that sort of thing. And so it might have just been that, I was going back to something that, sometimes you go back to like an album you liked when you were 16, and it's like, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah. No, I had that experience recently with System of a Down. I was like, oh, I remember loving Steal this album. Then I listened to it and I'm like, ooh, oh no, this music is too loud. I'm an old man now.
I still like them. I like the contrast.
The vocals
of the
especially are incredible.
I will admit that I'm right now. My ear is probably better suited to listening to his solo material, which is a lot less.
His stuff is melodic.
Yeah.
One of the things that really brings together System of a Down as a sound is the melody of that guy's voice. Like, he's such an amazing vocalist.
I kind of get annoyed the more the guitar player is singing, the more annoyed I get. Well, like their last album was a good album, but there was too much of the guitar player on that album for my liking. I felt like I
like him okay. I feel like that he's the sound I really associate with System of a Down is his guitar and then his weird voice.
I just don't like his vocals. I like Serge. Serge has a really interesting voice and has charisma.
Serge is musical genius.
He's like the Kramer of like metal band singers. Do you know what I mean? He's just got like this personality that's do you know what I mean?
Totally fair. So I get that. I get going back to something that, because like System of a Down, like that was like my early 2000s. Like I was a teenager. I was on my own for the first time. Like that was my anthem was when that came on. Anything they did.
You wearing those really baggy jeans, like the
100%.
Ones with the really wide. Okay.
The chains on them. That was me, dude. like I was like the stereotype. But like now I look back on that era of my life and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, I was a teenager. Oh no.
Yeah. See, when I was 16, albums I was listening to were probably more like I don't know. I have to go back and think now. But like, late 80s, early 90s heavy metal type stuff. Which doesn't always age as well as you would like.
No, some of it was really great. Like some of that stuff is actually timeless. And it's the same thing with any era of music, I think. But yeah, for the most part, what we listened to was garbage. I used to listen to Chumbawamba when I was younger. Like it's not.
Well, good. I would agree with that assessment. Chumbawamba never really.
No, they were never good. I just loved them. There's a difference. Even their best music is like.
Their best music sounds like a parody song. That's what I don't like about Chumbawamba.
Yes. That's the best criticism I've ever heard of them. That's incredible. I mean, like, so in general, I see going back to something that had a big emotional impact on you because you're not there anymore. You're not wrong. Like, you're not 16. You're not into. I mean, you are still into Ravenloft.
But I'm not like reading. Like, I was reading Von Richten books every day. I was obsessed with Ravenloft. And so I was really immersed in that kind of a vibe,
I still have that black box paperback you got for me, and I keep trying to reread it, and it kind of gets kind of D&D module-y for me, where I'm like, okay, this much information is not something I'm willing to absorb. I want to go in a spooky mansion and there to be a monster there. I need all this crap. So like I'm there. I get it. I get where like. And I get how that could speak to you. Like I could see myself as a younger version of me, like just peeling page after page and just absorbing them like a sponge. But like now I'm old and I have a job and kids, and I'm like, oh God, get to the monkey.
Yeah, you do read that kind of stuff differently. You do watch movies differently. So I think that's part of it. And again, Adam might be onto something too with the whole, I've watched it a million times to write that damn paper, and so maybe I just watched it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think you drained this film like a vampire. You got all the vital energy out of it, and it's husk remains.
But I'm still perplexed by that coconut. If you guys have any,
I didn't even notice the coconut.
So when the grandmother's head hits the wall, milk comes out, right? You saw that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can.
I thought it was porcelain. I thought she was supposed to be a doll.
No, there is a coconut shell in there. I swear to God.
There is.
Yeah.
No, you're not wrong. There's a coconut shell.
And so
for some
why?
reason.
So my question is it because that was just the practical effect that it smashed a coconut inside of a head against the wall? Or did they want you to see the coconut?
I'm going to say that was probably the reason. But here is the apologia I will construct as my headcanon for this. It is another one of the asynchronous elements, like the Rolls Royce with the devil in it, that is there to draw your attention to the fact that this is a dream, and these modern and impossible elements are intruding upon this sort of like
that devil in the car was that definitely had that effect, because you're like,
wait, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact they all had like modern day firearms, like there was so much to really enjoy about like where these elements would come in, because it seems like what a teenage girl would put into a dream, right?
Yeah.
Like offhand, I couldn't tell you when like those kind of firearms entered into the medieval English countryside. You know, I don't know how long the villager's lifestyle coexisted with those weapons, and I'm willing to bet she didn't either. Neither did Subconscious Mind. So there they are. By the looks
of her, she just read all of those like horror comic book things she had on the bed, right? Like that was her. That was her thing. But
I like that me and this chick would have a lot in common reading wise. Like you learn a lot about the character just through her dream, which I think is interesting too. So I'm gonna say it was intentional in my head canon. I don't think it actually was. I think it was a mistake. Like so many of the settiness of the sets was probably a mistake. But I'm gonna make up the lie that it was all intentional. It was all a Rolls Royce with the devil in it.
I did see on the Wikipedia page, the director does say having to try and do all this on the budget we had, the limited sets we had, and have it not look bad was an incredible effort. So the director is fairly aware of the limitations he was working under.
Okay. And he worked them in some skillful ways. Again, the Rolls Royce, that's...
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he was aware of it is probably why it only becomes a problem from time to time. He was very much conscious of trying to shoot things in a way that you weren't always thinking, oh, here we are in this set again.
And the music really carried it in certain points too.
Yeah,
it really helped the visuals.
Really good blend of then modern music with a sort of Baroque energy to it. Really good soundtrack. Yeah. I don't know if there's a standout piece, which is kind of a weakness, but the atmosphere of the music was pretty powerful.
Yeah, there wasn't like a Suspiria style like theme that you could. There might have been a theme, but there wasn't anything that like broke through like a.
This wasn't Goblin, people.
Yeah. or Aces High. Or Aces High.
But I need to rewatch Suspiria. I need to rewatch both of them, honestly. I can only find the new one.
I haven't seen the new one. I haven't seen the new one. I've heard it's good, but I'm very...
Oh, man.
I'm very
You got to do a back-to-back of Suspiria, dude. Like, if you haven't seen the new one, it's actually really good on its own merits. It's not just a remake. It does the different stuff.
No, I get that, and they do... I don't know. Whenever I've read people talk about it, I kind of, like, get irritated and I don't want to watch it. That's sort of been... It's the same experience I had with The Witch, and then I ended up...
We should annoy people.
Huh?
You and me should annoy people talking about it. Like, you gotta... It's worth it. I've seen it. It's worth it. Trust me.
You know what it is? I'll tell you why I get irritated. Because whenever people talk about the new Suspiria, like whenever I've read an article on it or any kind of thing in a forum, they always do it by shitting on the first Suspiria.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why are you doing this? Why do you have to attack the movie it's based on? Because they make it sound like they fixed the problems with the first one.
Well,
like,
here's what turned me off from watching it is people saying that it's like, oh, well, it explains everything. The first one, you don't understand what's going on. And this one, everything's explained. And I'm like, it's going to bring it back to this movie. I'm like, I like the fact that it is very dreamlike and there's a lot you don't quite understand. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that made me wary of it. I was I don't know if I want everything explained.
I mean, Suspiria is perfect. It's a really well done movie. And so it's just very... The hubris to take that approach bothers me, I think.
That's like the modern styles. We got to crap on all that. We got to act like we didn't love these things, that they're all garbage, and we're so much smarter than that now. This is a Joss Whedon-y style of looking at the past. It's just weaselly and cowardly. I hate that crap. The past ruled. Fuck you.
Well, I just don't get like. I don't know. It just turns me off to and again, it could be a good movie because I have heard only good things about it. Just like Adam was saying, we're not saying it's a bad movie. It's just that when I see that, I'm like, okay, well, why am I going to be as somebody who really loved Suspiria and who liked the fact that some of these things aren't explained? Why would I want to see them explained? I have no desire for further explanation of what's going on.
That's fair. I'm telling you though, dude, we really need to do a back-to-back. First of all, I want to see the original Suspiria again. It's been a long time. I only saw it when I was a kid. My mom was watching it because that's how things were back in the day.
Okay.
And I really loved it. First of all, the soundtrack's fantastic on the first one. That Goblin soundtrack completely rules. Second of all, my God, the visuals are so neat.
We could do like a we could do like a Bird with the Crystal Plumage and Suspiria double feature or something maybe.
No, let's use Suspiria. Let's watch the old one and the new one. And let's just.
I've been using my art AI program to make Italian horror themed ridiculous art for a while, so I'm on board.
Finally, an ethical use of AI.
Exactly.
So so I don't know anything else about this movie that we want to discuss.
I don't feel like we've been talking that long, but I guess we covered a lot of ground.
Well, we also covered Suspiria and System of a Down, so there is filler in this episode for sure.
I don't know that it's filler exactly though, because we're talking about it's going along with this movie, and this movie kind of defies a straightforward analysis.
Exactly.
That was why it deserves to be experienced.
Yeah, no, for people at home, Brendan always asks, do we want to plan this out and have segments? As soon as you start this movie's nope. I wouldn't even know how to do that with this movie.
Yeah, this isn't a movie where you can go by character to character or by scene to scene, or it just wouldn't amount to anything. What did you guys think of not every movie, but many movies have the moment where the name of the movie is mentioned in the dialogue. What did you think of how that was handled?
I applaud when that happens.
Yeah, I always clap. I clap. Good job.
I thought this was particularly well done because Company of Wolves is pretty hard to fit in. I mean, maybe it was in the dialogue and that's why they gave it the title. Who knows if it was vice versa. But it is sort of you wouldn't imagine that you're going to hear that during the course of the movie when you're watching it the first time. At least I didn't. I remember when he said it, I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. So I think it's kind of nicely done. Whereas there are some movies,
it was smooth. You feel jarring.
Yeah, but there are some movies they have the title, and then when they mention it, you're like, well, of course, this is how they're going to do it. You know what I mean?
And there's some movies you're not sure how they worked it in, like Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
I don't remember Superman. I remember watching that.
Straight up a Family Guy joke.
Okay. You'll have to fill me in because I don't know the joke.
It really is just that. It's just Peter talking about how people put the names of the movies in the movies, and he's sitting in the theater watching Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, and it flashes at the screen, and Superman's talking to one of the other characters, and he's like, "That's why I'm Superman for The Quest for Peace," and then it flashes Peter clapping. That's the joke.
I mean, the thing is with this, it being based on a story too, it's quite possible that it's just dialogue from the story too. So
it gets in the theme. It also is it relates. Yeah.
So. In this case too, it's not like the title. The title by itself is enigmatic. It's not a declarative type title like Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. It is something. It feels like they wrote the movie or they wrote the story, and then it's like, okay, what am I going to call my story? Oh, I'll call it that.
My favorite is Pray for Death. I think that's, to this day, that's my favorite. Yeah, they kill his whole family, and he's on his knees, and I saw it when I was a kid, so I'm probably butchering it, and he says, "Oh, I will make them pray for death."
For death. That's.
They should have just smash cut to the title right there.
I think they might have. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I don't know. But it's the ninja movie with the cool metal plate mask that he has over his face. Tremendous movie.
It does sound really good, actually. That sounds legitimately good. Whenever you embrace it,
Yeah, but here again is a movie that I embraced from when that came out in '85, and I saw it in the theater, and that was the last time I saw it. So, take my praise of the movie with a grain of salt. So I guess here we can end it unless we have anything further to add. I don't know.
I do want to add one thing that stuck out. One more thing that I liked about this movie, the little mini story that I was making fun of, where the chick crawls out of the well as a wolf and crawls back in as a lady. That lady's acting is really good. Her physical acting, where she's prancing around like a wolf. actually really, really good. Like,
Yeah.
shockingly good. Like, did you rehearse this? Like, who rehearses being a wolf this much?
Oh, I think there are actors who.
Well, he's probably a dancer. I mean, that's what being a dancer is.
Like,
is just
what was
knowing
that H.P. Lovecraft movie we saw,
kinesiology.
where the highlight was the woman at the end? It was like was it the Unnameable or whatever it was? I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I think it was the Unnameable.
Yeah. Yeah. But her whole that was all built around her physical acting at the end, right? And so
yeah,
so
I
it's
remember that.
Good little bit of physical acting there. Actually, really good. And they wrangled the wolves in a really cool, believable way. Which, again, that's hard to do, man.
I
Like, these were like
the dogs in this. Yeah, I thought they did as you know. I was one thing watching this movie. I was like, oh, thank God they're not all CGI dogs. I'm glad this movie is told. Like, there were lots of points where I was like, this would have been done as CGI and it would have been so much worse.
Yeah.
I will take
it would have looked
every
more realistic
cheese set
and so
CGI.
unaffecting at the same time.
Yeah, I just don't have the emotional reaction to CGI. Maybe because I'm too old, but I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, again,
so
I was. Oh, go ahead.
I just, those are two little bits. There's a lot of little bits like that we didn't quite get to talking about. You gotta watch the movie, guys. Watch the movie. It's weird and unique, and it's free on YouTube with ads. Just go watch it.
Yeah, and again, I will say,
it's also on Shudder too. If you have,
that's how I did it.
And that's how I watched it.
Yeah, I got a lot of things on Shudder this week.
With your money.
Yeah. They have there's a few that I'll recommend to you after the show, Adam. But I recommended it. I guess I've kind of rescinded my recommendation since then. But given that they like it so much, and also the fact that it is like a unique movie, it's worth checking out. I would just say do expect pacing to potentially be an issue. Do expect it to not have a, like Adam was saying, it doesn't really have like a cogent storyline.
No,
you got to go there for the atmosphere.
Well, it's got powerful themes, but no point exactly. It doesn't have one major thrust where you're like, oh, this is what the movie's about. No, it's kind of about those themes.
Yeah,
that's it.
And again, and it's also, I think I actually rented it. In fact, I think I got Shudder and didn't realize I had access to it, so I rented it. So you can rent it on Amazon as well, and the quality seemed fine to me. But yeah, so I guess we'll leave it here, and until next time, we'll talk to you later.